Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Just in time for the May long weekend, WestJet and its pilots have reached a tentative contract agreement. Alberta emergency officials offer an update on the wildfires and evacuations taking place across the province. And the Alberta Leaders Debate took place last night. We hear from both the UCP's Daniel Smith and the NDP's Rachel Notley, along with reaction on who the clear winner may have been.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. WestJet has reached a tentative contract agreement with its pilots earlier today and thus averting a strike before the May long weekend. A statement from the Airline Pilots Association says union leaders voted to approve an agreement in principle. Membership, meanwhile, will begin voting on the deal over the next few days. The airline grounded most of its fleet, parking around 130 planes at airports, leaving thousands of travelers in limbo. Alex Light is one frustrated Lethbridge, Alberta passenger who had a flight cancelled and is now stuck in San Diego.
I called WestJet customer service. I sat on hold for 3 hours, and in the process of sitting on hold with WestJet, while I was still on the phone, I got a notification in my email that said, "Your flight has been canceled." I had already beforehand expecting the strike to happen. I had booked an extra night at my hostel just to be safe. And my hope is that I can be reimbursed for that. Through my cancellation email, I found a callback option and I was able to use their online portal to fill it out and request a callback. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping I can get some answers from WestJet about how the heck they're getting me home.
Albertans are being asked to use caution for the May long weekend as around 90 wildfires continue to burn across the province. Christy Tucker of Alberta Wildfires urging people to be responsible for not starting any new fires. Parks and Tourism Minister Todd Loewen is asking people to restrict recreational activities on Crown land, including backcountry camping, mountain biking, and hiking. Alberta emergency officials say the air quality still remains poor in many parts of central and northern Alberta. Outside of the provincial state of emergency, there are still 22 states of local emergency. Colin Blair from Alberta Emergency Management Agency says there are still more than 10,000 Albertans who remain evacuated, with 14 reception areas for evacuees in the affected areas. 16 evacuation orders are still in place. Now, there was some good news, however, for the residents of Valley View.
The mandatory evacuation order affecting the town has been lifted. Re-entry to the town site began at noon today. As well, the evacuation area for the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation area has been downsized. Residents should go to the Alberta Emergency Alert for the latest information about how this impacts them.
There are more than 2,500 personnel battling the blazes across Alberta. Officials say an additional 113 firefighters from the United States and 18 from the Yukon are also on their way to help out. You know, we had sun mixed with cloud and the air quality in our region was moderate today. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, will it be a nice May-long weekend to head outdoors?
Yeah, Hal, this incredibly warm weather should continue through the long weekend. Just keep in mind, Saturday is looking at that widespread smoke, though, so the air quality indexes could be in effect as well as that warm weather. Now, we might have even broken a record on Friday. We were looking at over 30 degrees. Last time I checked, we were expected to hit 29, and last time we hit that record was back in 1964, and it was exactly 30 degrees. So we were over that today. As for the rest of the weekend, looking at highs of 28 and 30 for Saturday and Sunday. Just please keep in mind, like I said, that widespread smoke and hazy conditions. I'll be back later in the show to let you know how the rest of the long weekend and next week is looking. Hal?
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. A Claresholm, Alberta RCMP officer received only minor injuries from flying debris after his SUV was struck by an 18-wheeler on Highway 2 north of Stavely, Alberta on Friday afternoon. The semi-tractor failed to move to the left lane and struck the police cruiser, which had pulled over another vehicle at the time. An RCMP collision reconstructionist visited the scene and an investigation is ongoing. UCP leader Daniel Smith and NDP leader Rachel Notley squared off in a live televised debate on Thursday night. It really boiled down to who Albertans should trust.
I know that Albertans want a government that is going to focus on their interests, and that's what I'm focused on doing. I put forward a positive agenda for Alberta. We're going to cut taxes, we're going to make life more affordable, we're going to fix healthcare, we're going to address public safety, and I think that's what the election will be decided on. We have a one-member, one-vote party, and we have the opportunity for people to make decisions on our policy, and I'm looking forward to getting through the election and seeing what Albertans have to decide. I think people saw this evening the type of person that I am. What I always hear when people get a chance to see me is, boy, you're not at all like how the media depict you. The real me is somebody who cares about Albertans, that we're going to lower taxes and make life more affordable, make sure that we protect our publicly funded healthcare system, and also deal with the public safety crisis. And I think that's what Albertans care about.
I'm deeply concerned that based on her many, many, many years of advocating for privately funded healthcare, making folks pay for their healthcare, that is something that's on the ballot. And I was pleased to be able to put some of those issues to Ms. Smith. She didn't answer all of them, but and also to put forward our costed plan. We have got so many exciting campaigns going on all across the province. I suspect I'm going to be driving around to many of them, talking to our candidates, talking to their supporters out on the doorstep, and engaging with Albertans and communities all over the place. And suspect it's going to be pretty exciting as the momentum continues to build. And I will say on our campaign, we have nothing but evidence that the momentum is always building.
Now, was there a clear winner in last night's debate? Was either party leader able to shore up more support and sway over some of the undecided voters? To chat about it in more detail is our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson, who joins us from Edmonton. Tyler, in your opinion, was there a clear winner last night?
I think that the overall intent of each party was to sort of make the other one look crummy. I mean, that's not unusual for a debate, but in this specific context, what Rachel Notley needed to do was try and paint Danielle Smith as sort of this inconsistent person who was going to put Alberta at risk, and Danielle Smith needed to look back at Rachel Notley's record and say, is this the sort of thing that Albertans want to do again? And you know, I don't know if either of them were wildly successful at that. The format was a bit strange, and they both had just sort of a series of mini speeches almost instead of a debate. And there was quite a lot of stuff that didn't actually get brought up over the course of the hour that they were on stage. So a bit of an odd debate, I would say. And, you know, given how tight the polls are, you really have to wonder if it actually moved the dial at all for either of them.
Now, what about the undecided voters? Was either Smith or Notley successful in winning them over?
I think probably. So Abacus Data, the polling firm, has been tracking undecided voters quite closely. And the other thing that they've been sort of polling over the past year is what they're calling reluctant UCP voters. These are people who voted for the United Conservatives in 2019, but maybe weren't totally sold on them. You know, maybe they're more centrist, maybe they're, say, social conservatives. I mean, the breakdown of that group isn't especially well known, but the point is that you have this segment of the electorate who are lukewarm on the UCP, and it's not totally clear whether Danielle Smith makes them more enthusiastic UCP voters or actually pushes them away more. So that group, I think, is the one that maybe had something to look at last night. You know, Danielle Smith's a very, very polished speaker, very, very polished debater. Obviously, she spent a lot of time on television, a lot of time on radio, and that was really apparent on Thursday night. She was very slick, very smooth, talking directly to the camera, didn't, you know, fumble her words very often. So that group, if you can say that group is maybe concerned about Danielle Smith in a way that they weren't about Jason Kenney, which I think is a possibility, then I think she probably had a good night with those people, I would say.
Now, Tyler, many people, including myself, were really surprised to see Rachel Notley matching Danielle Smith wearing Tory blue instead of the traditional NDP orange. Was that an attempt to maybe win over some of those Conservative voters by Notley?
And politicians do think a lot about dress and image and stuff like that, but you're right. I mean, they look like sort of two peas in a pod. You know, a couple of friends out at a social club meetup or something. You know, maybe her orange dress was in the wash. Who knows? But certainly that was something that a lot of people noticed last night, and you have to wonder if it was just to sort of be more sedate and not remarkable. I think that's speculation. What the wardrobe decisions were last night.
And thankfully, no wardrobe malfunctions last night either. He's our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, joining us from Edmonton. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced dozens of new sanctions on Russia at the G7 Leaders Summit in Japan. His office says the sanctions are on those linked to Russian companies that provide military technology and know-how to Russia's armed forces and their family members of the Kremlin elite.
Today, Canada's announcing more than 70 new sanctions on entities and individuals complicit in the military actions against Ukraine, but also people who are complicit in the human rights violations that we continue to see on the ground.
Teck Resources, a mining company based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, recently made a $300,000 donation over the next 3 years to STARS, otherwise known as the Shock Trauma Air Rescue Service. Now, the funds will help support critically ill and injured patients around Elk Valley, BC. Rory O'Connor, the manager of social responsibility for Teck, says the relationship with STARS goes back about 30 years.
STARS helps to provide just an incredible level of additional support service that you hope you'll never need. But in an emergency, with their base in Calgary, they're a very close proximity to our operations, and they're able to provide incredible critical care. They have staff that are trained at an unbelievable level. Of course, with the wildfires going on right now across the country, we see a lot of focus on first responders, and we have amazing first responders locally. We have specialized mine rescue teams that work for us. We have local communities that have their own first aid responders, but STARS just offers that additional level of care and response.
Stuart Grant, a flight nurse with STARS, highlighted how important this funding will be for the organization.
The $300,000 is going towards providing the equipment, the training, supporting those aircraft so that we can be there for that next patient who needs us, including in the areas where Teck operates for their employees and their employees' families. So this donation supports me personally as a flight nurse. It provides the ability for me to have that next greatest equipment that is proven to be the best thing for our patients. It supports our training as well. So either our pilots or air medical crew, it supports our training. So I'm getting the most advanced training that any kind of nurse in the country is getting because of support like Teck is giving with us with this $300,000 donation.
Over the past year, STARS flew 29 missions in the regional district of East Kootenay, including 10 in the Elk Valley. The Lethbridge Salute Our Veterans Banner project is now entering its second year. It'll honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms we now enjoy today. BCN's Micah Quinn discussed the important project with local veterans who are helping to lead the charge for the initiative.
We're looking to put up an additional 90 banners.
Lethbridge residents have until June 30th to submit an application to ensure a military family member will be forever immortalized through a special banner. Glenn Miller and Wayne King are two of the driving forces of the Veterans Banner Committee here in Lethbridge. Last year, both veterans had their faces plastered on a banner to showcase their incredible military contributions to our country. There is also a second part to the project, which highlights each veteran on the online portion of the banner website. Miller says the goal of the Lethbridge Salute Our Veterans Banner project is to have each banner set up in different areas around the city, starting on October 1st and running through Remembrance Day.
So last year, the banners were displayed along the Cenotaph, outside Park Place Mall, out by the airport, and around Gulf Gardens. And all those have historical links to veterans. There'll be potentially 180 banners throughout the city, the same locations as last year, but in addition, spread out through other higher traffic areas and on the west side as well, down by the arena, Safeway.
The initiative is being spearheaded by the Lethbridge Legion, the 702 wing of the Royal Canadian Air Force Association, and the City of Lethbridge. King told us each veteran must have a notable connection to Lethbridge, and if they're still alive, provide consent to be featured.
And also the banner program is a countrywide initiative, really. It's not just Lethbridge. Many communities right across the country have initiated a very similar program.
Staff from the Veterans Banner Committee told us it will cost you $225 to sponsor a veteran on a banner. For more information on the project, you can visit lethbridgeveteransbanners.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
What a great way to honor our veterans. Many events will be taking place over the summer months, especially with the hotter temperatures coming up. The Downtown Business Revitalization Zone in Lethbridge is organizing different events throughout the downtown core to help attract more people to the area. Sarah Amies with the BRZ says it's important to bring more people downtown since it has so much to offer.
It's super important to get people walking around, to get that foot traffic, because you see a lot more in the individual stores and businesses when you're on foot. You can go, ooh, look, let's go into that store and have a quick look around. We've got so many unique stores. We've got personal services all over the downtown, fantastic restaurants.
A list of the summer events can be found on the BRZ's website. The residential school system affected many Indigenous families across the country, and it's still a hot-button topic of discussion today. An Ontario-based movie director wanted to share how the system affected so many people in a new upcoming short film. Now, part 2 of the story we first brought you yesterday, PCN's Angela Stewart caught up with the director of the film, who explained what viewers can expect in this picture.
The discovery of 215 unmarked graves in Kamloops, BC shocked Canadians, families gut-wrenched by the news. It was a painful reminder of how the residential school system affected many families and individuals across the country.
I think that the thing that people have a hard time quantifying is what it would have actually been like to go through that as a kid.
And those stories of going through the system are still being talked about to this day. Jonathan Elliott, an Ontario-based film director, knew he wanted to educate people on the topic. He says conversations began with survivors of the Mohawk Institute Residential School over 2 years ago on how they could best capture the message in a movie.
We needed to take that time because, not only is it delicate for each of the survivors to kind of give their experiences that influence the film and the characters in the film and the situations the characters encountered, but you really have to, just come at it from a very holistic perspective of, if we're going to tell a story about this experience, we have to do it right. We have to do it delicately.
Titled Little Deer, the film tells the story of 2 young girls who escape a residential school in 1967 to try and make it home to their families for Christmas.
Obviously, a story about young children who are dealing with the experiences of residential school, who find themselves on this journey, facing not only really difficult situations internally that they're having to face, they're butting heads with each other externally, but then also, even just the elements like being outside in the cold.
16-year-old Kira Vanderplug of Vauxhall, Alberta was casted as one of the main characters. Elliott says right from the get-go, he knew she was the perfect fit for the role.
I mean, that this was based off of real people as well. I felt like she really kind of captured some of their essences. And it kind of just felt like, for me, I don't know, like almost a no-brainer. Like as soon as I saw her, I was like, okay, she's the person to judge everybody else that's auditioning for this role by.
He says he hopes to work with the young actress again in the future. And when the film is released, he anticipates more people will have a better understanding of the system and how it affected so many Canadians. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Now, the film is in post-production right now with a potential release date in the fall and will be submitted to the Toronto International Film Festival. Hopefully it'll make its way here as well in Alberta. Well, it was kind of a mixed bag today for the May long weekend. We had some sunshine, a chance of showers, and more smoke blowing into southwestern Alberta. And a full look of the weather picture is on deck. Well, we enjoyed a little moisture in parts of southwestern Alberta today. Much more moisture is needed, however, in many parts of the province as the wildfires continue. Jeanette Roche is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, what's the air quality going to be like for the May long weekend?
Yeah, well, so far we are looking at some widespread hazy and smoky conditions expected on Saturday. So please keep in mind those health indexes could be in effect as well. And they can fluctuate basically from hour to hour. So keep your eye on that for sure. We are expecting a hot one again on Sunday, high of 30 degrees. We are expected to see that sunshine again. And then showers expected on Monday, high of 25 degrees, 20 for an expected high on Tuesday, high of 21 on Wednesday, and back to 20 degrees on Thursday. Thursday could see a bit of shower conditions as well. Hopefully that rain will wash away that smoke. Average high for this time of year, 19. Average low, 5 degrees. 30 was our high temperature on this day back in 1964. Like I was saying today, I think we may have broken a record today as we got above that. -6 was the record low that happened back in 2003. Sun rose this morning at 5:41. Sunset this evening at 9:15. So we're looking at 15 hours and 34 minutes of a daylight. On the west coast, a fairly sunny one expected. 22 for the high, a little bit cooler by the water. 40 winds by the Juan de Fuca Strait. 22 also is the expected high in Vancouver. Expect warmer conditions inland and a fairly high humidex as well. Widespread smoke is expected tomorrow in Edmonton with a high of 28 degrees. Calgary looking at local smoke along with 30% chance of showers, a risk of a thunderstorm, and high of 27 degrees. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we are seeing that local smoke also in effect, so there could be some air quality index checks as well. 25 for high in Saskatoon, 27 the high in Regina. Regina could see a chance of showers. 25 is the expected high tomorrow in Winnipeg with plenty of sunshine as we get to the central part of the country. Toronto looking at 5 millimeters of rain, high of 17 degrees. 16 for a high in Ottawa, expecting 10 millimeters of rain there with the risk of a thunderstorm, and a 40% chance of showers expected in Montreal with a high of 23 degrees. As we get to the Maritimes, not so much rain. We're seeing increasing cloud though in Fredericton and Halifax. High of 23 in Fredericton, 20 for a high in Halifax. 18 is the expected high tomorrow in Charlottetown with a mix of sun and cloud, and 13 is the expected high in St. John's, Newfoundland. And there you have it. That is your Saturday forecast.
WestJet is ramping up operations after reaching a last-minute deal with the airline's pilots to avoid a strike. Officials say, however, it could take some time before operations are back in full swing after the airline grounded the bulk of its fleet and canceled hundreds of flights ahead of the May-long weekend. WestJet is advising travelers to check the status of their flight before heading to the airport. Stats Canada says retail sales fell 1.4% to $65.3 billion in March. The agency says sales at motor vehicle and parts dealers dropped 4.4%, while sales at gas stations and fuel vendors were down 3.9% for the month. The agency says core sales rose 0.3% in March. The Competition Bureau is suing Cineplex for allegedly advertising misleading ticket prices. The Bureau alleges that Cineplex is breaking the law by adding an additional fee that raises the price of its tickets purchased online. The investigation found that consumers are paying a mandatory $1.50 fee for booking online. The Bureau alleges this is an example of misleading drip pricing, also known as a junk fee, which the Competition Act says is a harmful business practice. It says any additional fixed charges or fees are false or misleading under the law unless they're imposed by the government, such as a sales tax. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 53 points on the day to finish at 20,351. The Dow was down 109 points to 33,426. The S&P 500 was down 6 points on the day to 4191, and the Nasdaq was down 30 points to 12,657. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 13 cents to 71.73 US per barrel. Natural gas was even on the day at $2.59 US. Gold was up $20.26 an ounce to $19.7781 US, and silver was up 36 cents an ounce to $23.85 US. Feed wheat is at $11 per bushel, barley's at $8.82, canola's at $15.87, and corn is at $9.85 per bushel. Live cattle were up 20 cents to $165.73. That's for the June contract. Feeder cattle were up 18 cents to $206.28. And lean hogs June contract was down $2.28 to $83.03. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to $74.04 US. Recapping one of our top stories, WestJet has reached a tentative contract agreement with its pilots earlier today, avoiding a strike before the May-long weekend. A statement from the Airline Pilots Association says union leaders voted to approve an agreement in principle. Membership, meanwhile, will begin voting over the next few days. The airline grounded most of its fleet, parking around 130 planes at airports across Canada and leaving thousands of travelers in limbo across the country. The Alberta election is now less than 2 weeks away. What will it take for the UCP to hold on to power? Is it Rachel Notley and the NDP's turn to govern Alberta once again? Dave Naylor is the editor and Calgary bureau chief of the Western Standard, and he's been following the Alberta election campaign quite closely. He'll give us his thoughts next in an interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
The Alberta provincial election has just over a week left, and as we get into this mad dash to the finish line on May the 29th, we wanted to check in with our favorite news editor at the Western Standard, Dave Naylor. Dave, welcome back to Bridge City News. Great to have you on today.
Well, it's great to be here, especially as I'm your favorite.
Oh, yeah, all the time, of course. So, Dave, the first 3 weeks of May have been a whirlwind. And, of course, the she said between the leaders of the two main parties has created a large stir during this election cycle. So, let's start with the findings of the Ethics Commissioner, which was announced Thursday. So, this report says that both the CBC and the NDP lied to the public about Danielle Smith speaking with the Crown and, interfering in certain cases to do with COVID restrictions, like the Arthur Pulowski case, for example. So, Dave, do you think this could swing the needle of public opinion at all towards the UCP?
Well, it's sort of a case of good news, bad news. The bad news is the Ethics Commissioner found the Premier had violated the Conflict of Interest Act by talking to her Justice Minister about COVID court cases. But she was cleared of allegations that CBC and the NDP made about a month or so ago that she had personally done it or people in her office had done it. So for the UCP, that's a big win. Premier today demanded the CBC retract the story and apologize, or she may continue her threatened legal action. And she sort of threw up her hands at the finding that she contravened the Conflict of Interest Act by saying, well, I was asking my justice minister for a justice opinion. And she's sort of saying, what else can a premier do? And then she invited the justice, or she invited the ethics commissioner to give her some advice the next time on who she should talk to and where she should go for information on justice issues. So, I'm sure the NDP will jump all over that violation, and then the UCP will jump all over the NDP for the allegation that she interfered directly. So good news, bad news.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to note that this was an internal investigation as well. So, Dave, do you think that there's much weight in these findings, or should they have maybe hired an outside third-party investigator?
Well, the ethics commissioner is independent. She reports only to the assembly. She has reserved the right to put punishments forth when the assembly reconvenes after the election, but it appears to me to be a minor infraction that is not going to cause too much trouble.
Okay, all right. And then, of course, speaking of Notley and Smith going head-to-head, the two leading ladies had a debate Thursday evening. So, Dave, if you could have asked the first question of the two party leaders, what would it be?
When will it be over, please? The NDP will be hammering health, that the UCP has damaged the healthcare system, whereas the UCP will be focusing on the economy and the job that they're doing and how the Alberta economy is booming and leading the nation again, and sort of throwing back to the days of Premier Notley when the UCP claims hundreds of thousands of jobs were lost. So,
okay, so Dave, how much weight do these debates have for the outcome of an election? I believe there was a poll suggesting that 42% of Albertans were waiting until the debate to make up their minds about who to vote for. So, do you think that that's accurate?
There's anywhere from maybe 10 to 15% of the population that is still undecided. But unless you get a real knockout blow, a real punch to the guts, you tend not to change your affiliation to whichever party you're favoring before going into the debate, unless somebody just looks foolish and silly.
So with that said, there's been a number of different polls. Some have said the UCP leads, some say that the NDP does. Most are suggesting the two parties are pretty much neck and neck. So how much weight do we put into these polls?
Well, there's certainly a lot of them, isn't there? I mean, the other day, I think there were 4 separate polls. Within this last week, we've had a poll showing the NDP leading in Calgary by 8 points. Another poll shows the UCP leading in Calgary by 8 points. But basically what the polls show is the NDP's leading in Edmonton and parts of Calgary, and the UCP is dominating in the rural area. But to gain power, the UCP is going to have to sweep a lot of the Calgary seats. So bottom at the end of the day, each poll is a snapshot in time. Some are taken this week, some are taken, when the election was called on May 1st. But every poll says the same thing. It's going to be very, very close, and it'll come down to a handful of ridings where an MLA could be elected with, just by 100 votes. So each vote counts this election, Jeanette.
Isn't that crazy? So speaking of which, Calgary is kind of that swing area. So that's where you are now. So let's talk about that. So what are you hearing from Calgary voters with just 1 week left in this race?
Well, you know what? It's interesting to see the NDP leader, Rachel Notley. I don't think she's had a campaign event in Edmonton. She's just focused on Calgary. The NDP headquarters is focused, based in Calgary. Premier Smith is, she's kind of in a tough position at the moment with the emergency state of alert with the forest fires. So she spends her morning dealing with that disaster and then spends the afternoon dealing with campaigning. I think the general sense in Calgary is that the NDP just doesn't have enough support in the city to get the sweep that they need. They're going to have to flip some ridings and some that they won't. We had a poll out earlier this week saying they will flip Calgary Elbow and get that sort of downtown area riding. But again, it seems to me that the NDP is just slowly fading a little bit in Calgary.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, so with that said, what kind of a critique would you give either Notley or Smith in this?
Well, the NDP is not so much campaigning on their platform; they're just campaigning on what a horrible person Danielle Smith is. They're not putting out too many new ideas. They have costed their election plans, but they say their year in power, their first year, they'll have more than a $3 billion surplus. The UCP hasn't costed their election campaign, but they've been more detailed in terms of platforms, tax cuts, where the NDP has promised that they will increase business taxes. I think interestingly, one of the key things is the NDP is, the UCP is going to bring in the Compassionate Act, where people, family members and police can put an addict into treatment, whether they want it or not. And, a lot of people who work in downtown Calgary and they see the social disorder that happens in and around the LRT system in Calgary as well as Edmonton with drug addicts. That's going to be an interesting key in the election to turn some votes, I think.
Oh, big time. And then, of course, there's the flip side of that some people are saying that's like forced confinement. And so we need to meet people where they're at. So that's kind of the other argument to it as well.
It is, Jeanette, but, we've got to try something, because what we're seeing here is not working. The NDP opened up a safe consumption site near downtown Calgary, and that area has now become a no-go zone. So the status quo isn't working. Look at what's happening in British Columbia and Vancouver. The downtown east side is, it's one of the worst urban slums in North America now. So it's my personal opinion. We've got to try something different because the status quo just isn't working.
And of course, like we were talking about all the promises being made. So there's been a lot of spending, a lot of promises during this campaign. So were there any that stood out that made you think, well, how can that happen, or that ain't going to happen?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. And all of these promises, all of these billions and billions of dollars is pledged, hoping and praying that the price of oil goes up. Right now, it's trading at around $70. The current UCP budget has got it figured out at $76. So unless oil goes up, then all of these promises are going to be thrown out the door, because we're not going to be able to afford it. Either that, or we're going to go into more and more debt. So both parties are hoping oil continues up, and there are forecasts that it could hit $100 this year, and if that's the case, oil as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then of course, the big carrot for voters in Calgary is that Promise Entertainment Complex and hockey rink. And Dave, you're right there in Calgary. So, what's your take on this new Promise project?
Well, you know what? We are a city that rejected a couple of years ago a bid to go for the Olympics again because the finances weren't there, and Calgarians weren't willing to risk the future of the city on some sketchy Olympic details. So I kind of think this may fall into the same issue, that they don't want their $1.2 billion to go to billionaires who own hockey teams. They don't want tax money used that way. The UCP has framed it by saying their $330 million won't be for the arena, it'll be for areas around the arena. But there's still a whole bunch of Calgary city tax money that would have to go to the deal. Polls show it's, pretty evenly split, 50-50. So there is a lot of people in Calgary that don't want to see their dollars going to billionaire hockey owners.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that announcement has moved the needle of support at all to either side of the spectrum?
You know what? It's hard to say. I mean, there's no doubt that Calgary needs a new arena. It's just a matter of who's going to pay for it. I note residents down in Tempe, Arizona, this week in a plebiscite, I guess, refused to have any city money go into a new arena for the Arizona Coyotes. So that's got talk of the Coyotes moving.
Moving, yes, I know. I heard that this week too.
Anywhere from Surrey to Hamilton at the moment. But you know what? I don't think we're at that stage yet, even though Flames owner Murray Edwards did kind of hint or threaten a couple of years ago that if we can't get a deal, he was going to move. Wow. So you know what? In terms of importance, I think it's well down after health care and public safety and education. You'll find the arena deal down in that neck of the woods.
Oh, wouldn't that be crazy if Calgary lost their Flames? I think there'd be a lot of very unhappy people. We're not going to go down that road, though, are we?
No,
Not yet, anyways.
We're a long way from that. Let's hope.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Dave, when you look at the two main political parties here, so which leader do you think has really answered that voter question of what's in it for me?
That's a good question. I mean, we've had 4 years of Rachel Notley, so we kind of know what was in it for her, and protecting her union support. She's married to a top union leader. We've only had, what was it, since October to see what Danielle Smith's like in power. It seems to me with all the attack ads from the NDP, I know more about Danielle Smith from 5, 10, 15 years ago than I do about Danielle Smith now. But she's strong on the economy. There was a Angus Reid poll out just today, showing which candidates are favored on which issues. And Danielle Smith did very, very strongly on the economy and jobs, and Rachel Notley did stronger on healthcare. So, I'm sure if she's elected, Danielle Smith will be laser focused on the economy.
Okay. I mean, there's also talk of within the UCP party, I guess. That's kind of redundant to say that, but within the UCP that there's a lot of UCP members maybe that aren't even very happy with her as a leader. If she does win, do you see something similar happening to what happened to Jason Kenney?
Absolutely. As of May 30th, the knives will be out for Danielle Smith, win or lose. Obviously, if she loses, it makes it a lot easier for members to remove her. If she wins, then the problem becomes, as all the polls are saying, she's going to be winning with a much lessened majority. So that'll mean the knives are out for her because of that. So there's a lot of unhappy Kennyites still within the party that do not like Danielle Smith. So she's going to have to tread carefully, and continue to work to unify the party underneath her as of May 30th if she wins.
Well, it looks like we are about out of time here, but Dave, we could definitely talk about this all day. Appreciate having you on today.
We could have had a 2-hour special, Jeanette.
We totally could. We'll have to have you back for that. We'll
My
plan
pleasure.
it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right, that was Dave Naylor, the editor at the Western Standard, and he joined us from his office in Calgary. Many of us know someone who is struggling with Alzheimer's, dementia, or memory loss. So why are these illnesses on the rise, and is there a way to reduce the likeliness of this happening to you? Well, today's guest has some timely advice on this topic. Dr. John Colbert, he's been a board-certified family practice doctor for more than 25 years and a New York Times best-selling author. His latest book is called Dr. Colbert's Healthy Brain Zone: Reverse Memory Loss and Reduce Your Risk of Dementia and Alzheimer's. Long title, but oh, it's so important. Welcome to Bridge City News, Dr. Colbert. Great to have you on today.
Thank you. It's great being here.
Awesome. Okay, so first off, can you give us a brief snapshot of your book and how can we reverse memory loss? How is that possible?
Well, first of all, realizing because we're seeing so much Alzheimer's nowadays, it's only going to get worse because it's following two major epidemics here in the U.S., in Canada, and throughout the world. It's following the obesity epidemic and the diabetes epidemic. And now, over 100 million people in the U.S. have either diabetes or prediabetes, or almost a third of our population. And those trends are following in most other countries too. And what Alzheimer's is many times it's just, as we call it now, type 3 diabetes or insulin resistance of the brain, where many times the brain just can't take in enough glucose, which is the fuel for the brain. So again, what we do, there's 6 types of Alzheimer's disease, and most people don't realize. They think it's just one type, but there's 6 types. There's 4 kinds of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the number one cause of dementia. About 70% of dementia is caused by Alzheimer's. So I break this down. I teach people how they can screen themselves to see if they have early dementia or if they just have some age-associated memory impairment. And so then we start them on a program on how to heal the brain. The most amazing thing is back in the 1990s, we discovered that the brain has plasticity. In other words, the brain can literally be restored and renewed. We can regrow new neurons, new dendrites, new synapses in the brain. So the brain has the ability to self-repair if we catch the process early enough in the disease process. Once that beta amyloid, that goo, that is all that scar tissue, has accumulated to a degree, it's kind of like picturing a raisin versus a beautiful plump grape. When that grape actually gets dehydrated and forms a raisin, well, eventually that's what happens to the brain with scar tissue and beta amyloid. And when we don't have enough hormones, hormones are amazing for the brain, especially for men, testosterone, and for women, both testosterone and estrogen. But other key hormones, these hormones repair the neurons, repair the synapses, and prevent shrinkage of the brain. And it's something I use commonly. I have to optimize those hormones.
That's fascinating.
But there's other factors involved. There's these powerful plasticity hormones that help the brain regrow and rewire, such as brain-derived neurotrophic factor and nerve growth factor. These are powerful growth factors that are stimulated through certain nutrients and hormones like testosterone and estrogen, but also through intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is one of the most powerful things we can do that'll help boost the brain-derived neurotrophic factor to start to heal the brain and the neurons. And so I go in detail of how to do that, as well as the diet for the brain. The most powerful diet for the brain is the healthy ketogenic diet. Now, 99% of keto diets are unhealthy because they have tremendous amounts of inflammatory foods like butter and cheese and big slabs of meat and bacon and lard and stuff like that, which is terrible and inflammatory. So what I do is I put people on a healthy keto diet with lots of healthy plant oils like olive oil and avocado oil and nuts and seeds, as well as fish oils. These are really healthy for the brain. Lots of veggies, lots of fiber. But what I take away is the sugar. The brain craves sugar, but sugar is detrimental to the brain. It literally ages the brain and creates insulin resistance to the brain. So the diet is absolutely critical for the brain, as well as intermittent fasting. And then I go into all the different nutrients we need for the brain, the lifestyle factors like exercise, sleep. Sleep is critical for the brain. Did you know that sleeping on your side actually removes the most beta amyloid from the brain? Sleeping on your side can remove 10 to 20 times more beta amyloid from the brain. And so many people just sleep on their back or on their tummy, but sleep on your side, that is the key, and then well oxygenated sleep.
So it's a good thing. It's a good thing then to sleep on your side.
Yes, it is. For the brain, it's very good. But what the brain needs more than any nutrient is oxygen. And so many people are losing their memory over the age of 60 because they're not getting enough oxygen to their brain because they have sleep apnea. And it's their palate is sagging down and they're gasping for air, but they're not realizing it and they're forgetting. They're starting to forget. And just simply losing weight or a CPAP or an Inspire device can correct that. It's real simple. So I teach them all the key things. And usually it's the little things we miss that can totally restore the memory.
Now, that is quite the snapshot of your book there in 5 minutes, but I have a question. So you're saying it's almost like an epidemic right now following these horrible diseases like diabetes, but is it because we have so much of a larger aging population right now with the boomers getting older, or is there something more to it? Is it because there's more chemicals in our food and or is it bad health choices? Is it a combination?
It's all of the above. It's all of the above. It's our obesity epidemic. It's our type 2 diabetes, our pre-diabetes epidemic. It's our bad food choices. When we sit down at a meal and we choose that French fries and that deep fried chicken or anything deep fried that's highly inflammatory to the brain, you are inviting Alzheimer's into your brain. And then when they come by with that beautiful dessert tray with all that beautiful chocolate cake, that key lime pie, that ice cream, that's highly inflammatory to the brain. So every choice we make can invite death or Alzheimer's into the brain, or dementia, or health into the brain. And that's why I choose living foods. I choose lots of olive oil, lots of veggies, healthy proteins, not deep fried.
Yeah, so like the plant-based